I'm live with Mike Forrester, host of the Living Fearless Today podcast. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate you having me on here, my friend.
Well, it's, the least I could do. You have had me on your show and been so kind to me since we first connected, I believe through the Total Life Freedom community that Vincent Pugliese runs. And of course, we realize we have other friends in common, John Lee Dumas and many others. And I've been interested in your transformation, what you've done with your career and your life and what you're doing now with your podcast and the work you're doing, and interested to dig into that. Of course, we're recording this live on LinkedIn. So if anybody is out there joining us live, you have questions, feel free to put those in the chat. We'll be sure to get to those, and this will be on our podcast as well. So Mike, you started a podcast, which is called the Living Fearless Today podcast. Why that name? Why is it called Living Fearless? What's it about?
So to understand really what my journey has been about, I lived under fear. And we think so much that like fear is only in our personal life or it's only in one area. But that kind of stuff rules everything, whether it's, how we are with our family, how we appear with our friends, how we, show up at work, what decisions we make at work. And so because that was such a core component for me and breaking free from that, that was something that I wanted to say, hey, this is possible. And so it wasn't something of live fearless, right? I wanted to say, hey, here's the hope, and it can be just for today. Let's make it through this moment in time. The rest of it will worry about itself, but let's focus on the here and now and being in a healthy place. So that was where the name came from, was just being present and being fully engaged, uncomfortable, possibly, but just stepping into life.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting fearless or moving past fear is such a big, I think, need for many people to step into life. As you mentioned, when I get asked about the biggest thing that holds people back from owning their career, following their dreams, going after big things, accomplishing their goals. Mm-hmm. For me, it always comes back to fear. Fear and limiting beliefs are the biggest things that hold people back. I'd like to do XYZ one day. I'd like to start a podcast. I'd like to go for that promotion. I'd like to change careers and move into HR or try something different, but I'm afraid of what might happen. Whether you admit it or not, it's fear, right? I'm afraid of being rejected, of being judged, or of something else entirely. And that fear holds so many people back from following their dreams. And it sounds like it has in the past for you. So could you share a little bit more about your journey and where you were? Because I think you built a pretty successful business, but you're still saying, hey, fear was holding me back from really living the life I want to live.
And let me be honest here, just fully upfront. Yeah. Fear is still something that I have to work through. So it's one of those of, in launching the podcast, there was still fear there. It was, what if nobody listens? What if I say things incorrectly? What if I invite people and they tell me no? Oh my gosh, not everybody's going to say yes, but we're so wrapped up in it. Yeah. And we create like this false expectation for ourselves, like neither you nor I would look at other people and say, hey, yeah, so-and-so has a podcast and everybody they ask is saying yes, but we'll put that kind of like expectation, just like those results on ourselves. Like we're going to get up and bat 1,000. It just doesn't happen. And so I'm actually, coming out on the back end where I put out some ads on Facebook and I said, hey, let me put this out there, get some more traction. And some of the responses I got were, comments about, what are you doing? This isn't real, just kind of putting things down. Dude, I let those comments have too much power, to the point where if you look back right now, you'll see, hey, here's an interview with, like Anthony Trucks. And there's no recap, which was the way I started out. But I let those thoughts get in my head and they sidetracked me for a while. And it's still one, I mean, I'm still growing through it, right?
Yeah.
We don't just get up and go, hey, I'm going to go to the gym. You post going to the gym. Are you expecting yourself to bench 400 tomorrow?
No.
Not likely. But it was that same thing. And I took the negative responses, the unkind responses, and I took them personal. And they're from people that don't know me.
Right.
So it's like, I mean, I'm still learning. I'm still working through it. I'll find strength in one area and discover that there's another area that I need to grow in, or that I have that opportunity. So, it's like we're multifaceted. We're not just like this simple being. So, you'll grow, and then you have another opportunity to expand and express yourself differently there.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Both of those subjects, one is that I just posted about this morning. So coincidence on LinkedIn and Instagram, we see people who we hold up as successful, right? And everybody's definition of success is different, right? But usually it's people doing the things that we'd like to do. Just we assume that they've got it all figured out, that they had this grand plan and they just put it together and everything was a success. And what we don't see is all the things they contemplated that they never launched because they were afraid or it just wasn't the right thing. All the things they tried to do that failed or didn't work out, right? Because we don't really pay attention. We don't see those. All the time they spent agonizing about whether something was going to be successful or not, whether they should do something or not. We just see the success at the end. And most of the time, most of those people, I talk to many, quote unquote, successful people. Again, everybody has their definition, right? And I think about my own road as well. And all that I've accomplished has been on the back of all the things I've tried, and many of them didn't work out, right? And all the things that I've spent hours like daydreaming, contemplating, planning moves with my podcast and business and other things that I never did anything with, right? And then there's other things that I tried and didn't work out. And we don't see those things. We just see, oh, they did something, and they give ourselves a little bit of grace, right? To say like, hey, I'm on my own journey. I'm trying things, right? And it's okay. And then the other thing is, and I wrote about this in my book too, I have a whole chapter on comparison, right? We compare so much and we look at, and then we put so much stock in what other people think or say, right? That we hold ourselves back because we're like, oh, well, if I share this, and I still do this, I've done a lot of work, Mike, and people listening, like to get to where I am, where I can put content out on a daily basis and not really care that much what people say. Now, easy for me. I don't have that many haters yet. Right. But I still have to get past it on a regular basis. Like, oh, should I share this? What will people think? Is it the right thing? And sometimes I hold myself back and then I have to kick myself because I should have just put it out there. Right. But that fear is real. And you're right. Like fear never really goes away. It's just about developing so we can recognize it and have the courage to get past it.
And it's just like going, and I'm going to take it right back to the gym. It's just like you go in and you're working your biceps, right? If you solely focus on your biceps, you'll have amazing biceps. But if you're skipping leg day or back day, you're going to look really disproportionate. And it's being able to not just go, where's my strength, but where's my weakness? And just because you make those areas stronger doesn't mean it's going to go off perfect. I mean, I worked with a friend recently that did a launch and like the URL was wrong. Dude, like you would think, if that happened to me, I would be devastated because, or would run the risk of being devastated, previously would have been. But it's like in looking at it, it's like, oh my gosh, somebody did this. I need to let him know. And it's a totally different standard. And until we just release that, and like you said, give ourselves the grace, man. It's like, you're not perfect. You're not going to bat 1,000. You're not going to get results unless you take a chance. And, like for me, it's almost become a game. I'm still learning. Like I launched messy. So 4.5 months ago, I was just like, okay, this isn't perfect, which you can tell I was a control freak, but it was one of those of, it wasn't where I wanted it to be. Who was going to be the harshest critic? Me.
Yeah.
Nobody else. Yeah. And it's like, nobody else would have cared. And so I just went, how impactful is this? Is the message still going to get out there? Yes. Then take the chance and launch it. And it was one of the best growth opportunities for me, was continuing to push my comfort zone, to continue expanding my knowledge, my experience. It's like right now, I started last week putting stuff out on Pinterest. Like, Pinterest, really? It's kind of like off in left field, but it's been an interesting experiment. It gives me a chance to try something, see what it is, and adjust. And the more that I do those kind of things, the more I'm growing, the less I'm wrapped up in the old belief that I was taught, that if I fail, I'm a failure, which is absolute bull. But that's where I lived. That's what I was brought up under. So I need to continue to push that so it doesn't encroach back upon, my thoughts and my actions. So just play in stuff that you're not comfortable in and become comfortable, testing, playing, having fun. The results aren't always the biggest thing we should be looking at. It should also be, how am I pushing myself outside of my normal bounds?
Yeah, I love that. I'm live with Mike Forrester, host of the Living Fearless Today podcast. And we were talking all about fear and how it often holds us back in our careers and how to overcome that. I know we have some people watching live on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, be sure to put that in the chat, share with us, let us know where you're tuning in from. Mike, can you take us back in your career? Let's humanize this a little bit more. And where did fear most hold you back in your career? And what was like the aha moment that you had that had you really make a shift and go jump into this whole new world that you're in?
Well, first off, you can imagine fear held me back from applying for those jobs that I'm not enough. I don't have the skills that Steve or Susie or, whomever I'm working with. And fear would also be one of the things that would foster almost like a movie in my head, where I would play out scenarios of, say, you and I are applying for the same job. Well, Andy's got it in with the manager, and so I don't have a chance. All these false stories that I didn't even get out of the starting block before I had set myself out of contention for the position. And so it holds you back, not only there, but in your family life. I mean, it's pervasive. And if we don't address it, it just continues to hold us back. It's almost like, I think we've heard the story about the elephant, that they train them with chains, and they can't get away. And then over time, they build up this belief, I can't escape. And so they're held by these flimsy pieces of rope, which we know the elephant's strength, but the elephant has forgotten. So we're training ourselves to play small, to stay back, and to not rise to our full potential. When we listen to fear and let it run rampant through our thoughts.
You're right. We've convinced ourselves through the fear and limiting belief. Like, you go through so much time of like, I can't do this, I'm not as good as those people, that we take ourselves out of the game before we even have a chance. It reminds me of, I grew up playing a lot of baseball, and my dream was to be a professional baseball player, but I got in my head about it. And let's be honest, I was kind of a mediocre player. I could have been better if I had practiced more, probably. But I got to high school, and my high school team was so good, and I didn't think I was that good, that I didn't even try out, which, looking back, is so ridiculous, because the worst that could happen was I tried out and didn't make the team. But I took myself out of the game, and I didn't make the team anyway, because I didn't even try, because I was afraid, to be quite honest. Right. And like I said, I've done a lot of work since then, but that's who I was then. And I see people do that all the time in their careers too, just like you're talking about. Like, you just take yourself out of the game before you even have a chance.
Well, and the other thing was, it's like, right now is a time, I think, where people are going back to work after being like laid off, right? And it's one of those of, how many job descriptions do you look at that they're shooting for the moon? And you just go, I don't have this, I don't have this, I don't have this. Wow, I don't have a chance. So why even apply? But we hear it in the news, they're begging for people to apply. But we've taken ourselves out of sending the email because we've built up this false belief that I don't have a chance. You don't have a chance if you don't send it in. They don't know who you are.
Right.
But at least give them a chance to tell you no. Hey, what about this? Let me ask questions. It's like, give them a chance to see who you are and what you bring to the table, because you may have something that they weren't thinking about, and they're willing to let this other thing go that they've asked for and say, hey, you're the right person. I'm so glad you applied. Don't remove yourself.
Right. Exactly. The worst that can happen is they can say no, which I was always deathly afraid of rejection, which is why I wouldn't even apply for things. Right. But it just puts you back in the same position you were already in, which is not having that job or that promotion. So what was that pivotal moment for you, Mike, where you kind of made this shift and you're like, I'm not going to let fear hold me back anymore. And I want to go inspire other people to live fearlessly or have more courage to achieve more.
So it's been a journey. I would love to say it was like, overnight, I just woke up the next day and appeared this way. Yeah, no. It was like the first really big jump was when I went from working as a corporate employee to being a consultant. And, I had sold myself and just said, that's so risky. What about X, Y, and Z? I don't know that I'm going to be enough for this position. And the amazing thing was I had a consulting friend who said, look, you have more skills and you're able to communicate about this stuff than the majority of people that I go to as clients. Take a chance. And for whatever reason, I listened to him, and it was one of the best things. Now, was I confident in stepping out? No, not at all. Man, I went to, one of my clients, and I was nerves, man. I was just shaking all over the place. But that first step helped me to take, subsequent steps in putting myself out there and seeing what was possible and continuing to learn and grow my skill set. So take a chance. Whatever you're facing, look at it. How detrimental is it if you step out and do it? Most of the time, we will build it up and build it up and build it up, but there's no check as far as how probable is it. I drive down the road, I could get in a horrible accident. How likely is it? Usually not as much. And so keep that stuff in perspective and go take a chance. Let yourself grow. As far
Mike,
as, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, Mike. Continue.
I was going to say, as far as stepping from the consulting into like doing the men's transformation coaching that I do now, that was a whole nother step. That was almost like, if you remember the movie with Indiana Jones, of him stepping out into that gap, that chasm.
Yeah, in The Last Crusade. Yeah.
Yes, that was very much how it felt. But I've been doing coaching more of like mentoring or just coming along. For me, it was just being a good friend. But when I would go on a consulting opportunity, I would come in, and let's say you're the manager, Andy. I would come in and I could build relationships with those that are reporting to you, because I'm not seen as an internal threat. I'm a consultant. I'm not vying for their jobs. And when I come in with the perspective, hey, I want to help you build up your skill set so you're more of a value and asset to the company, it endeared me to people. They would then start trusting me with their personal stuff, and I was able to help people, work on who they were, how they showed up at home, who they were to their children. That was really where I came alive. That was my heart. But it was, again, being able to being willing to take that chance, just like I did from going from a corporate employee to a consultant. It was that same kind of, I'm going to take a chance on me. So that was really weird.
Related to that, you made that move from corporate to consultant. You're still in IT, and now making this move to being a men's transformation coach, where, ostensibly I would think, hey, there's money to be made there, but it's not as lucrative as being an IT consultant, right? Where we know hey, we've got to invest money in IT. Right in line with that, we got a question on LinkedIn from Dr. Michael Thompson, who asked, about
Mhm.
changing occupations when you know that, hey, if I make this change and follow my dream, passion, curiosity, whatever it may be, I'm probably going to have reduced income. Maybe I can make as much later on, but I'm going to, take a step back
Yeah.
from an income perspective. How do we address that and account for that when, especially, we've got a family
Yeah.
depending on us?
I would love to say that I've never contemplated that. That was at the forefront of what kept me there, was the unknown, that fear of what if I don't make it? Because my wife was homeschooling our 4 children at that time when I made that transition. And
Hmm.
so I was the sole, financial income. I totally get where you're coming from, Dr. Thompson. The thing that I had to do, I'm a high C on disc, so I'm very into checklists. I'm like an Excel nerd. Um, if if I had something, I had to go look at it and analyze the truth of it, because often my beliefs or assumptions were inaccurate. And so I went and I would research, hey, what's the likelihood of being in this, and finding people that were doing it. Like I shared, when I made the step to being a consultant, I talked to a consulting friend, and it wasn't just a random, like, all of a sudden kind of whimsical change that I did. I talked with him to say, how long have you been doing it? Where are you at? What are your skills? And I still took time even beyond that to consider it, and called other consultants that had come in and worked for the company that I was with. And so there's more to the story than we have time to share. But just to say, go out and find out if what you're afraid of, what your fears are, the things you're apprehensive about, go find out if they actually have basis and truth. Because often when we're just thinking about this in kind of isolation, our beliefs can be askew. So I mean, if
Yeah.
if you've got anybody that's in that place, reach out to them and just
Right.
have coffee.
I think that's an really great, important step, to have conversations with people that are doing the thing that you want to do, and
Hmm.
find out what's working, what's not working. What do they wish they would have done differently? Are they glad they followed that path? And I think you got to dig deep and decide, like, how much does it mean to you to follow this path versus, like, playing it safe, right? And staying on
Right.
the path that you're on. How important is it going to be? I always consult my future self. So I'm 41 now. I ask myself at 50 or 60, right? Like, or especially going to the end of my life, what am I going to wish that I had done? What am I going to regret more? Like, if I take this chance and fail, am I going to regret that I even did that? Or am I going to be glad that I took the chance? And the other thing is to ask the question, what's the worst that can happen? Like, how much of a safety net do you have in place?
Yeah.
I'm amazed by the number of people I come across. There are a lot of people that don't make much money or don't have that much savings, but I come across people who are like, I really want to make this move, but I'm really afraid. What if I don't make enough money? And then I ask, how much do you have in savings? And they're like, well, I've got $80,000 in the bank. And it's like, okay, you've got a runway, like, if you want to, but there's this psychological, barrier that holds a lot of people
Hmm.
back. So I think you got to ask the question, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Like, honestly,
Right.
the worst thing, like, you quit your job, you go start this business and you make zero money. And after 6 months or so, you decide to hang it up and quit. Well, if you had enough money, let's say, to get you through this 6 months, maybe on a tighter budget, but maybe you got through, um, and then you got to go get another job. Maybe there's some quote unquote shame aside, that goes along with that. But at least you gave it a shot, right? And
Yeah.
if you have, like, some good skills, you're employable now, you're going to still be employable in 6 months or 12 months, and you'll probably be able to go back and get another job. And for me, I'm going to be glad I at least gave it a shot, but it's going to come down to, how much do you really want to do it? For me, I left corporate to go start my own business. And I've had a lot of ups and downs. I've had a lot of challenges come my way, but I've been beyond determined to make it work, because I am so I'm so determined, right? I really want to be an entrepreneur. I want to make this business work. And my wife knows that. And we haven't had to cut back too much, but we will. And, even if we end up living on the streets, which is never going to happen, right? Or moving in with my parents or something like that. If I still have my family, if I still have my wife and kids, I don't care about anything else, right? That's all that really matters.
Well, and I think the thing to understand is I didn't make my decision to transition out of corporate in a vacuum. There were lots of talks with my wife about, okay, what's your security place? What are your concerns? What do you see as the benefits? Like, my wife has the ability to see me in a different light faster than I would have at that time, right? She could pick me apart. But it's one of those that she could see, like, hey, this is going to be a pain point for you. This will be a great thing. This is a fantastic opportunity because of this. And so we took the time, set out, we did cut back on stuff. We built up, a financial war chest, so to speak, savings to give ourselves some runway, and then made the jump. We stayed on the same page with each other. So understand that I made it with a spouse that I was in communication with and understood the desire to go in that direction. And like Andy talked about, I didn't want to have those regrets. I had plenty of regrets to look back to because I had lived under fear. I hadn't run after those management positions. I hadn't pursued, the opportunities that were within reach, but, I was kneeling down. I took my knees out from underneath me, to make it so that I couldn't achieve those. So, just make sure that it's like the fears, the things that are holding you back, that you address them, you communicate them, and, you're just aware of them working with your spouse.
Such great stuff here. I'm just like taking some furious notes over here for future content I want to put out there to inspire more people. Well, Mike, we have had a discussion, and your video froze up a couple minutes ago. So I think this is probably a good time to wrap things up.
I just noticed that as well. I'm sorry, man.
That's right. Luckily, your audio has still been strong, and we can still use this on the podcast. Mike, this has been great. I am all about inspiring people to overcome fear, to starve their fears, to pursue their dreams, follow their curiosity, go after more things. I wrote about it in my book. I talk about it on the show. I love that you're talking about it. For people that want to follow more of your journey and hear more of what you're doing, I know you've got this podcast, Living Fearless Today. Where can people go to find out more?
So the easiest way to listen to the podcast is if you go to livingfearlesstodaypodcast.com. It'll take you to the website. You'll be able to listen to it there or check it out on any of the podcast host platforms. And if you want to reach out to me on social, you can hit me at hi, as in like hello. So HI, and then Coach Mike. And you can get me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Mostly I'm over on LinkedIn and Facebook, but I would love to have a conversation with you, encourage you, help you to, take those steps that are holding you back to see you obtain, those higher levels that you're wanting. So thank you for having me on, Andy. And I appreciate those that are listening and sending in questions.
I love it. Thank you so much, Mike. And thanks so much to everybody who tuned in live and everybody listening at home. I appreciate you. I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to talking with all of you again soon. Thanks, Mike.